Good afternoon. Troy Lopez, Account Technology Strategist at Citrix, and today I want to cover a little bit about DeviceTRUST. This is not a video that's going to introduce you to the technology. We're going to dive right in and configure a mitigation for Windows recall today, primarily because some customers have been bringing this up as something they need to be prepared for. And I wanted to showcase that DeviceTRUST can 100% be leveraged to be able to identify if Windows recall is enabled on an endpoint and be able to mitigate that and take action to it. So today what I'm going to do is I have my VDA, this Windows 2025 machine, and within this machine, we've installed the DeviceTRUST agent as well as the console to push out the policies. Now, the way DeviceTRUST works is you create a context. That context has all the details of what it's trying to look for, and you tie in the context to the actions, and the actions will essentially respond to the context that it's identified for, whether it's a log on or a reconnect, and then take action upon that. You can also set specific messages based on those actions, whether it's a deny into the environment, and then you can have specific messages to guide customers how to get back in. Now, what we're going to do today is essentially work on disabling Windows recall or identifying that Windows recall is enabled on an endpoint, and then take an action depending on what we identify. Now, looking at this context for this specific flow, the way DeviceTRUST is going to work is it'll start with the default value of unavailable, and it'll work from top down and to the right. And it always will start with a connection from the client extensions that are installed on your endpoint to the agent that's installed on the workload or the VDA. Once that connection is established, it'll move down to the next tile, part of its flow. And because we're trying to identify specific registry entries, whether they are available or not, that's going to be the first step before we even look at the registry values to see what we're going to take action on. So the first thing we're going to do is identify whether they're available. So we'll look at HKey local machine at the Windows AI, and if it's available, we're going to continue down on this flow. Over here, we're also going to look to see if it's unavailable. And if it's unavailable, most likely this machine is not a Copilot PC, so we can allow this machine in because there'll be no fear of any screenshots being taken. Now, the next flow starts looking at the HKey current user key under the Windows AI. And here we're just same thing, trying to find out whether it's available. If it's available, continue down on the flow. And if it's unavailable, as you can see here, it's going to continue down into this flow where the registry is unavailable and they'll get access into the environment. Now, once we flow down here to the next tile, we already know that the registry key is available or unavailable, but if it's available, now we want to find out what values are in there. And this key specifically, when it's set to 1, it means that we have disabled Windows recall. If it's set to 0, that means Windows recall is enabled. Now, if we find anything other than 1, we're going to deny access or essentially send it to a block. And then we'll look at the HKey current user key and do the same thing. Identify 1 for disabled, 0 for enabled. And if it's 1, we continue letting that user get access into the workload or VDI. So now, once we set the context, we'll want to go to the action. Now, to simplify this, all we really need is the action on the block, because we already know that the availables and the registry unavailable are going to allow the user in. What we're going to do is on logon, on reconnect, and on change context, which means that when a user's within the session, if they change anything on their endpoint that we've deemed that we're monitoring, we'll be able to react to that. Now, there's additional options that you can set here. As you can see, you can get very granular, but we're only going to try these options as part of our test. Now, the last piece is the messages. Here in the action piece, you can also see the messages that you can set here. And these would be messages, for example, like a title of the message and some details to help the user mitigate what they're currently experiencing, whether instructions to be deemed safe to come in, or maybe reach out to IT. So at this point, we'll set our policies. And what we're going to do is launch our Windows 2025 desktop. It's important to note that within this desktop, my registry entries for the Windows AI are set to enabled, as you can see, 0. So as my desktop is going to launch, we'll give it a second here. We can see that the system from DeviceTRUST is essentially giving me the message that I've configured to please disable the Windows recall feature on the device. And as you can see, I've put some instructions for the user to be able to go and turn it off. So here the user will be able to sign out or wait for the timeout to sign out. The user will be able to go and now mitigate this issue by going to their start menu settings, security and privacy, and essentially disabling Windows recall. We will do it by going to the registry. We'll change the local machine. Now we'll change the current user. And we have essentially disabled Windows recall on this machine. Now I'm going to relaunch my desktop. And the expectation is that I should be allowed in because Windows recall is essentially disabled on my endpoint. So in a few moments, my desktop should appear here. In just a few moments. And as you can see, the desktop is loaded and there are no messages in regards to my device posture or my security stance getting access to the device with Windows recall. But it's very important to note that we also set the context change. What's important about that is, let's say the user does have access to the session, but they accidentally go and they set their security privacy settings and enable Windows recall again. So we'll go and set it as if we were a normal user. And all of a sudden, in almost real time, the session was blocked with details letting the user know that they currently need to set their Windows recall back to disabled to get access. Now, what we're going to do here is we'll disable it once again. And you can see in almost real time, the session is unlocked, allowing that user to work. So again, very quick introduction to how to be able to solve the Windows recall issue for your organization. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out.